And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes on this Monday. My name is Jeff Owens, Director of WEIU Radio. This is Issues and Attitudes. We're on your 13, WEIU TV and FM. Today's topic is bullying. My co-host is Amanda Norvell.
Hi, everybody. How are you tonight?
Hope everybody is great. It's going to be today and tonight when people watch and or listen to the show. It's fine. Our guests today, Dr. Melanie Mills and Dr. Angie Jacobs, both from the EIU Communication Studies program here on the campus of Eastern Illinois. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Nice to be here.
Move you up a little bit to your mic, Angie, there. Well, I know you said you were the assistant chair for an upcoming conference that's going to be on campus here for bullying. I believe it's October 5th in the Martin Luther King Union. So let's talk a little bit about what people can expect at the conference. Then we'll talk about each of your presentations at the conference.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the conference is called Beyond Awareness: Strategies to Eliminate Bullying. We're bridging voices in our community is the name of the organization that's sponsoring the conference, and it's really an opportunity for educators and community members to get together to see what we can do to eliminate bullying. We're going with the assumption that this isn't the first time people have heard about bullying, and we wanted to provide something for the community that was more than just making them aware of bullying. So a major goal of the conference is to go past awareness to equipping people to deal with bullying issues.
Okay, and then Angie, talk about what you'll be talking about, which I know is really directed towards the parents and the teachers, correct?
Correct. The presentation is titled Equipping Teachers, Strategies for Parent-Teacher Interactions. And one of the things that we felt was really important for the conference was not only to address how do we deal with it from the child's perspective, but how do we deal with it from the parent's perspective. And what we know oftentimes is that parents aren't even really aware that bullying is going on. For a variety of reasons, kids aren't telling their parents, or they're telling them very little about what's going on. And so parents are coming into the school expecting answers, and this is the first time really that teachers and parents are getting together, and oftentimes, and it's a pretty complex situation. And so I'm talking through how do we deal with those when parents are angry, parents are uninformed, and that's what the presentation is, kind of equipping teachers for what you can expect when a parent wants to come and talk to you about bullying.
Now, what got you interested in wanting to speak at this?
Well, I teach a research course, and my students actually for the last couple of years have been collecting bullying issues. And we spoke as a group about what issues were important to them, and the students said, we want to talk about bullying. And so they've been collecting these stories, and they're wonderful, beautiful stories. And some are heartwarming, some are heart-wrenching. But this was something that's been important for us for quite some time. And then when Melanie and Mildred invited me to come on, I was really super excited. So I'm not only doing my own presentation, but my students, some of them from my past classes, are also performing these bullying stories at the conference.
Okay. And then Melanie, your subject matter for when you speak?
My presentation is called The Dark Side of Interpersonal Communication in These Relationships. I think probably one of the more important things to take away from my presentation is that we're not going to get anywhere just dealing with bullying by addressing bullies and victims separately. We need to look at what it is in the dynamic of the relationship between them that encourages bullying. What kinds of things can we intervene with to turn both bullies and victims away from a path of what becomes ritual abuse.
Okay. Now, one of the things I was thinking about this morning is that when you think about bullying, it seems to me that it's more of a younger or a grade school, elementary school, or high school. But obviously, we're on the campus here of EIU. Is it a college issue as well?
Yeah, I think it is. When my students collect their bullying stories, and I just speak from this of having that knowledge, they want to automatically go back to grade school and high school because I think it's easier to talk about what once was. But I've had many students who say, I'm still finding it happening here, but they do feel a little more equipped to handle it or walk away from it, whereas when they were younger, they didn't quite feel as, equipped to do that.
Okay. What about you? Did you feel the same, Melanie?
I do, and in fact, I wouldn't limit it to the college campus either. There is a growing literature in the area of workplace bullying that indicates that it certainly doesn't, end at either your K through 12 education, college, but rather continues beyond into a number of workplaces.
And the other thing is there's cyberbullying, which is probably the one that's become most prevalent lately in the news, where Facebook or Twitter or the other the places they can go for social media. Is that going to be addressed in the conference, the cyberbullying part of it?
Yes.
Absolutely. Dr. Justin Patchen, who is the co-director of the Cyberbullying Research Institute, is one of our speakers, and he's widely known as a speaker in this area, and we're very excited to be bringing him to campus.
It's one of those things, and I'm going to sound naive here, but it seems to me that cyberbullying would be the easiest one to get away from. But can you tell me, do you know why it's not, or can either of you expound on that?
Actually, it's one of the hardest ones to get away from because it's a 24/7 deal. I think the biggest difference in bullying nowadays compared to when you and I were children is that we could go home and get away from it. Students now are accessible and vulnerable to bullying all their waking hours.
Okay. Let's talk about maybe some personal experiences. I know off mic we just got a couple of seconds before to talk about it, but I can remember walking home from like grade school, and I was always wanting to make sure that I got past a few houses very fast, because the older kids who were either out of high school or high school had already been released for the day, they weren't really what you would call overly mean, but they would taunt you and call you names. And at the time, when you're 8, 9, 10, 11 years, you don't really think of that as bullying, but it obviously was. And you said something, you just had that feeling in your stomach. It's like, I just got to get by these houses and I'll get home. Do any of the three of you, Amanda, Angie, or Melanie, have stories of you remember being bullied? Assuming you weren't bullied.
I can't believe I'll admit this on radio, but yes, as a matter of fact, I used to have a group of girls in high school who just absolutely wanted to make my life miserable. And so I remember all through my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I hid out in the bathroom during lunchtime. And when anybody would walk in the bathroom, I would pull my legs up and pretend I wasn't in the stall because I just could not go through the taunting, the name calling, and so forth. So yeah, I mean, it's a topic that's very close to my own heart and experiences.
And I think we all have experiences with mean kids, and I don't know that we can make that go away entirely. So, but I do think that we can work to equip our students to deal with difficult people and deal with difficult behaviors, so that they do feel equipped to respond to mean comments or, the taunting and so forth.
I just think I was super naive growing up because I was just trying to see the positive and everything. So I can't think of any times I was ever bullied or anything. I was always that person that talked to everybody. I was friends with everybody. I was there for everybody. So
And you had the unique childhood of, you said you moved a lot.
Yeah.
So that, maybe got you out of a little of it. Maybe you weren't, so that's it. The one of the things, that I was thinking about also again and for the show is that maybe people who are tuning in or listening or watching or whatever, really what defines either a bully or a bullying moment? So is there an actual definition of that so you know when you've either seen it or become a victim of it?
Well, not having the literature in front of me, but bullying, I think, is defined more about repetitive, intentional, hurtful behavior where one person holds some kind of power over another person. And so it might not necessarily be physical, but it can be things such as just isolation and, emotional abuse that way of not wanting to include somebody in a group. But it's this intentional hurting of someone. And it happens in so many different ways that I think one of the things we have to do is start identifying all the different ways that it does happen, because it isn't always this, thing that's easy to see. It's very subtle oftentimes.
Then, Melanie, you were talking earlier about, how, the identifying, the identifiers. When you talk to a school counselor or a teacher or something, what should children say to them so maybe they can, start to thwart some of the bullying? What should a victim say to a counselor, a teacher, professor, or anybody?
I don't think maybe the important question is not what they should say so much as how they should be heard, because a lot of times students will say they did try to talk to somebody and they felt that they weren't heard. So I think it's important for all of us to be a little more sensitive to what counts as telling us about bullying, because sometimes parents will respond that I never knew, or my child never told me, and in fact the child will say I told you over and over again. They just didn't use the word bully perhaps. So part of our purpose is to raise awareness for the kinds of clues, behavioral clues, that you might look for that indicate that bullying's going on, even if the word bullying isn't used.
Do you know any of those clues off the top of your head?
Yeah, changes in eating behaviors, changes in behaviors, generally speaking. A child who loved to school at one point and is dragging their feet to go in the morning now is one example.
Right, and I would piggyback that was to say a couple of the other things that even parents can look for, things like crying, general anxiety, nightmares. But generally, yeah, I think the
Grade
one
changes.
Thing, yes.
Performance changes.
Like staying on the topic with the parents, if a child has been bullied and tells their parents, like what action should their parents take further? Because their parents aren't just going to go up and be like, you should stop bullying my kid, because that's not really going to help. So
Yeah, and a lot of times students won't tell their parents because they don't want their parents to make it worse, which parents can certainly do with some kinds of school interventions. So, that's a very real fear, and it's a fear that empowers the bully, right? So I think the most important thing is to believe them.
to believe them. Okay.
And then after they believe him, I mean, should you contact the bully or the bully's family, or what do you think the best course of behavior would be? Would it be to go to the teacher or the counselor, the principal? I mean, what level do you pick to where do you go to file a complaint in that situation?
Right. Well, I think some of the literature right now is pointing to building these parent-educator partnerships. And so I think we start there in terms of educators and counselors talking with parents about what do we do. Because I think the knee-jerk reaction is that we just go and we say, you stop bullying, and we really don't have a background for what's going on, what is actually the cause of this bullying, if it actually happened the way that the child said it happened. And so I think all adults need to be informed about it and make informed decisions with each other. But we do have to, I think, equip parents and teachers both to not have a knee-jerk reaction and really listen to what the child is saying before we can even make decisions about how it gets handled.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that another difficult part of that is the real answer to your question is it depends, because it depends on the nature of the bullying itself. Is it physical endangerment? Is it mean comments? What's going on? How long has it been going on? How many people are involved? Do the parents have a relationship with the other parents? If not, then talking to the other parents without the school in the middle is likely to blow up. So, it depends.
Would you think that something out of this conference would be more like so you could create some policy for maybe school districts to start? Because I know not every school district has a bullying policy right now. They're in the process of creating one or thinking about creating one. So would this be some kind of embryonic stage where that one would happen with a conference like yours coming up?
I think maybe you could call it an embryonic stage, and that would be safe. But it's not our purpose to have people leave the conference with policies about addressing bullying. It is our purpose to have them leave with a better understanding of social and emotional issues that contribute to bullying.
Could you talk about some of the other people that are speaking, maybe some highlights so people can know what to expect if they want to attend?
Sure. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Dorothy Espelage. She's a professor of educational psychology at the University of Illinois and a very prominent speaker in the area of bullying, particularly in the area of LGBTQ relationships and issues, and we know from research that those students are more vulnerable to certain kinds of bullying, and that the outcomes are maybe more dramatic in terms of harm to students. So we're very happy to have her not only talking about bullying prevention and intervention, homophobic bullying. We have Dr. Justin Patchen, who I referred to earlier, talking about cyberbullying. I think it's important to recognize that cyberbullying is beyond Facebook and MySpace, if anybody even uses MySpace anymore. Can I say that on here?
Yes, you can say anything you want.
But also to texting, because a lot of times we'll find that students are targeted for text messages that are particularly disturbing and threatening to students, because in that case they are very individually targeted. and so forth. So he has a lot of good information to bring us.
I know even right around now is when all the Halloween texts and all the screaming and all the stuff that, I remember last year my son got a few things that were probably way too scary for someone to get via text. Somebody thought it was funny, but there is that line of what's funny and what's bullying and what's scary and what's accepted, and I think those are the kind of things you're talking about will be addressed or talked about at this conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are hard questions to answer. Where do you draw lines, and whose perception counts the most? Where does intention fit in?
Now, Angie said that she was drawn to this subject matter via a class and her students. What about you, Melanie? I mean, what got you in wanting to be involved in a program like this?
Well, I have to tell you, Dr. Mildred Pearson, who is the founder of Bridging Voices in our communities, is a very charismatic leader, and her vision for the possibilities of addressing this very difficult issue in schools captivated me. So I have to say, it was the vision of the Bridging Voices in our community group, and the idea that it takes all of us, not just teachers, not just students, not just parents, but all of us together in our communities to make meaningful change happen.
So let's go back to the cyberbullying. You just made me think of something. And Angie, I know you have children. Now, one of the things that always, even in our family, is my wife will check our kids' text messages and emails and things like that. And I know what's one of the issues that comes up in our house is, how's the best way to address that or to start that, to make sure that nothing of the wrong nature is going on? I mean, do you have an answer? I mean, it's a tough one because I'm dealing with it too at home. You just make sure that your kids are safe, but then they're like, "Oh, what are you checking my messages for? Don't you trust me?" So, how do you get the conversation going? And you can help if you know, Melanie.
I don't know that there is a right answer. What I would love is to have this parent manual that tells me all of the answers that I'm supposed to have.
Absolutely.
When my kids run across these things.
I want a copy.
I will tell you this. I did have an incident. My daughter is now 18 and a freshman in college, which is hard to believe, but back when she was about 13 years old, she was bullied, and it was a very, very sensitive subject to our family, and it caused her to lose sleep. She was violently, physically ill from it, and so I made the choice at that time to contact the parent, but in a very, I think, appropriate, concerned case, because it concerned this child of hers as well, and did speak to her. I don't know that that's the case, that you can do that for every single incident. The one thing I would say is that parents need to avoid is don't just fall into the trap of telling the kid to suck it up. Don't let this bother you, or fight back, because those only rekindle the fire with the bullying. And so
they pour gas on the fire.
Yeah. And so I think that seems to be one of the things that we want to do, is we don't know how to fix it, and so we say, oh, just ignore it, it'll go away. But I think we have to, at least for our child's sake, let them know that we're listening, let them know that we are concerned, and that we, any way that we can help, we will do that. And so it's a conversation you have with your child. How do you want me to help?
Okay. Would there ever be an instance, you think, and this might just be a crazy question, but with an instance where it would be okay for a child just not to go to the parents, but go right to the school principal or counselor? Are those issues that maybe can be handled internally at a school, or no?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Not every family has a great relationship where the kids feel comfortable going to their parents, or maybe they've gone to their parents and gotten the, suck it up message. So in that case, it's entirely appropriate for the child to go to their trusted, elder at church, or at church. Well, at church, because sometimes that happens too, but at church or at school or...
Now, do you know, that's another question that in my mind, it's just crazy, I know. Is there a policy of bullying on at Eastern about, is there official policy or any wording in anything in the, I can't think of the word.
There's the Student Conduct Code, which last time I read it doesn't actually have the word bullying in it, but it's clear that, sustained and repeated abusive behaviors are not tolerated.
And do you know about Mattoon? I mean, is there anything in that?
Well, I do know that they're trying to put together bullying intervention programs, and they do address it at general assemblies at the school, and teachers are, doing training to recognize it in the classrooms.
Amanda, anything on your mind?
I was just going to talk about the conference. Is it just like any type of particular bullying, or is it just bullying as a whole? The conference.
It's bullying as a whole. It's a day that's designed to welcome and start conversations across different groups in our community about addressing a variety of bullying types and so forth.
Go ahead. I was gonna let you.
I was just going to say, when people are asked if they've ever observed bullying going on, most of them will say yes, and the follow up to that question is, well, what did you do? And the answer is, I didn't know what to do. Nope. So part of the purpose of our conference is to address that issue and give people ideas about what we can do.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think, to identify the different types of bullying, because there's bullying, there's abuse, and then there's fun spirited, and there's mean spirited. A great example is Matthew and Charleston football game Friday night. It's sometimes it can be fun spirited between two rivals like that, but then when does it cross over to weight? The teachers or the schools need to get involved. So is there a way, and I know you're probably going to say it depends, but is there a way to tell when those gaps are not bridged, I guess?
Well, the one way I would think of those differences is this was when you talk about the rival games and things, it's not this sustained, repetitive thing that's going on that causes someone great anxiety or fear that they just don't want to show up, at school or wherever, at workplace, whatever it might be. And so, I think the fun, competitive nature of sport kind of lends itself to that little bit of bullying here and there, but that's not really what we're covering here.
And I think it's important to use the word carefully so that we are talking about the sustained and ongoing behaviors rather than isolated joke or prank or something like that here and there.
Okay, so really, if I'm hearing you correctly, then if there was just one incident where somebody did something, that's a less alarm if it's just a one-time incident. But when it gets to 2, 3, 4 and repeated is when the alarm bell should be going off either in the parent's head or the child's head. It's a scary call.
Well, it depends on what that thing is. There can be single incidents that are horrible.
I think we call it conflict.
Right.
Possibly. Yeah.
Right. But I think we need to be careful of when we're calling some of these behaviors bullying.
When you talk about nationally in the last, I guess it's probably been 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, where you've heard this word bullying. Do you think that the governments as well as the states and the cities and nationally are doing enough, or is the word just getting out gradually, and where on every campus and every school across America it's being addressed?
I don't think it's being addressed everywhere, obviously. We're learning. I think, as Melanie mentioned earlier, we're building awareness. But we've gotten to a point where now we're aware, but we need to start working towards how do we fix this? How do we help? What do we do?
Other speakers at the conference, or are there any other interesting topics that we maybe have not got to? I don't want to forget about your conference.
I'll tell you, all of our speakers are interesting. So we have about a dozen speakers speaking all day long, and registration is available for one session or sessions all day long. So we would encourage the public to join us and register at BVC, that's Bridging Voices in Our Community, bullyingproject.org. There's a link to our registration page there, or contact any one of the planners.
Yeah. And if you go to eiu.edu and you just type in bullying, if you're in, it'll take you right to your page too.
Good.
And you get all the information there. I tried that this morning. I was going to also say, what are the goals? What's the goal of the conference? Is it just going to be one and done, or do you plan on doing more as the future goes on?
We plan on doing more. This is an annual conference. This is the second annual event. It's actually the third event that Bridging Voices has sponsored. So yes, we do plan to continue on. Not necessarily with the same topic, though. We will always be about bullying and always be for making our world a safer, better place for all of us. But we'll have different topics.
Friday, October 5th, 2012, here on the campus of VIU is when the bullying conference is, Bridging Voices. So just FYI, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Melanie Mills and Angie Jacobs, both in the Common Studies Department here at EIU. About 4 minutes left. The other thing I was wondering about, you always hear now that celebrities attach their names to these causes. I know, Jenny McCarthy with autism. We just had autism last week we were talking about. Has there been any celebrities talk about bullying? Do you know? I know I like to throw curveballs every once in a while. I guess I would. But would it help, I guess would be a better question, if somebody came out like, I don't know, Sean Connery or whatever, and said, I was bullied as a child. Would that help you or hurt you, do you think?
I think it helps whenever people with celebrity are willing to put their face on an issue, particularly if they're popular in the media, particularly if they're popular with kids. I think that helps. What do you think?
Well, I do. I think bullying is one of those things that oftentimes is stigmatized too, where people just don't want to admit that they've been bullied, that they've had those experiences. And so putting a recognizable face to that, I think, makes it more not acceptable to be bullied, but to speak out and say, these have been my experiences also. And I think with all things, awareness is the first step in creating change. And that's what we're trying to do. And you hadn't mentioned it, Melanie, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about. One of the goals is to put together a survival guide also for all of our participants. And so not only because we have consecutive sessions going on at the same time, so I know not all participants can be there at every session, and so we're trying to put survival guides together in case they weren't able to be somewhere, but helping again to equip them to go back to their schools, to go back to their homes even, and use the materials that they've gained from the conference to maybe go that one step beyond awareness.
The survival guide will be made open to the public or online so they can maybe take a look at it? Or?
Well, we will have resources available online, but the actual survivor guide itself is available for everybody who registers.
That's good. That's a neat outcome of that. Amanda, a couple minutes left. Anything else in your mind about bullying?
No.
That's okay. A couple minutes left. What we like to do is, obviously, tough topic today when you talk about bullying. Nobody really it's one of those things you don't want to talk about until you have to, and so we had to today. But we always like to end on a positive note or something different, so we throw out what we call the world famous 8 questions. So I just go down the line, and I ask you 8 questions that are completely unrelated to possibly this topic. So we'll go Melanie, Angie, and Amanda on this one, all right? All right. Favorite thing about Coles County?
Favorite thing about Coles County? I love Coles County. I came here in 1985 thinking that I would stay here for a year or two and develop my credentials to move on, and it got me. I'm still here. So I love this community.
And the
I love the
two-story
way
outhouse and
yeah. I love the people in central Illinois.
Angie?
I thought you were going to give me a different question. I don't know. I would say.
We'll skip Amanda?
We'll skip on Amanda.
Since I'm new to Coles County, I'm going to say Hit Mix 88.9 WEIU.
There you go.
All-time favorite president?
Oh my. I don't think of presidents that way. I guess I like John Adams because he included his wife as his partner in decision making, and he took her seriously at a time when women weren't
Now that's a
taken
quality
too
answer
seriously.
there. See that?
That is quality. I don't have that quality answer, but I have to go with Abraham Lincoln because he is a special part of Illinois.
Real quickly.
Very cool vampire.
Roosevelt.
There you go. James K. Polk for me. I'll have to answer that one. I think he was a very underappreciated president. Angie Jacobs and Melanie Mills, we appreciate it very much for you guys coming in today and talking about this topic. And again, it's October 5th here on the campus of EIU, Bridging Voices in our community. Everyone have a great day. This is WEIU.